7. Sorrow's collar. That was the last time Alma took Sorrow out of doors for training in the garden. That night snow fell in earnest like heavy wet ash and dampened the world. Days passed, 7 of them. Sorrow languished. In the week after Alma took the whip to her, the lynx refused food, only lapping apathetically at her water dish. Her coat grew greasy and unkempt. She lay with her muzzle on the hearthrug, her amber eyes tracing embers upward as they went, her chin, ashen from the rug, barely lifted at all. The ridge of her spine and the twin arches of her hip bones jutted out. Emery needn't have worried about Sorrow. Alma had done for him the work of making the animal into nothing more than a listless house pet. There was no danger in her any more. Her teeth were not used for eating, let alone attacking, and her claws, darkened by ash, would not be raised in Alma's defense. Tilly came and went, building up the fire again and again, and Alma sat listlessly beside it, falling once more into her own dark sadness. Forbidden now from visiting the glass-blower, she did not leave her room for any reason, not even to dine with the king and the onslaught of nobles arriving for the wedding. It was accepted almost as self-imposed isolation. It happened this way sometimes with damsels, and the days before the wedding, or so Alma heard from the whispers of the women who tended to her. But she did not respond. Her eyes were the only part of her that seemed to move at all. Back and forth they darted, from the fire to the now falling outside the window, and back to the fire again. Tilly pulled open Allie's drawstring bag each day, redressing the burn on Alma's left hand, but as soon as she left, Alma would wipe the balm away, leaving a greasy stain on her skirt, and stare into the glass-mottled scar, as if trying to see something in it. "Lady, please," Tilly begged each time she entered the room, this time proffering a mug of ale, that time presenting a meal, another time suggesting a change of gown, a change of venue, a change of outlook. But Alma had already changed. She did not know where she had started, or what she had been, but she knew it was not this. Not this, she thought, looking at her hands, once scarred, one pure. Not this, she thought, her breaths constricted by the gowns she had to wear. Not this, she thought, shaking her head slowly as she watched Sorrow grow thin and lank, her shoulder bones jutting. Not this, she thought, upon seeing her reflection in the silver goblet Tilly forced into her hands. But she did see something in the goblet's gaze that startled her into motion. She blinked, set down the goblet roughly, its contents splashing onto the table, and strode across the room to the tall ovular mirror, where she stood for all her fittings. She stepped close as she could to the mirror and stared into the eyes reflected back. Had her eyes always been this color? They were tawny, like chestnuts. Had they not once been lighter, more yellow, like Sorrow's, and like the eyes that she had taken from the wall? But the eyes that blinked back at her were not amber. Decidedly not. Alma returned to the fire and knelt by the lynx. She stroked the cat's greasy pelt from forehead and down along her back, feeling each heartbreaking knob of the cat's spine. After a moment, Sorrow blinked open her amber eyes and then dropped them once more upon the hearthrug, as if even the effort that it took to hold open her eyes was too great. She was dying. Alma knew it. Though there were just 3 days remaining until Alma's wedding to Emery, Alma was certain that Sorrow would not live that long. "Oh, Sorrow," Alma said, "my darling Sorrow." Sick of stomach, but sure of what she must do, Alma rose to her feet. "Tilly," she called, her voice strong and clear. And the girl must have been outside her door, for she appeared at once. "Yes, lady, find the king," Alma ordered. "Tell him I have need of him." No one wanted Alma to have the castle in such a weather. Leave the castle in such a weather. She was delicate, they said, and in poor health. She should wait until after the wedding, at least to venture out of doors, but Alma insisted. And so it was that she and Emery were bundled into a carriage heaped high with furs, and with hot stones at their feet, and Sorrow as well. Alma did not feel like talk as their carriage steered through the town, and Emery did not press her for conversation, for which Alma was grateful. She sat by his side, underneath his shared fur, and she felt the warmth of his long leg down the side of her, through layers of their clothing. Sorrow lay pressed against the door in spite of the cold that seeped in underneath, panting. Alma watched the cat's long needled tongue, and listened to her labored breathing until she could stand it no more, and then she burst out, "It is not warm. Why does she pant?" "It is a sign of stress in an animal," Emery answered. "It need not be warm for an animal to fear." Alma leaned down to stroke Sorrow's head. The lynx neither rejected nor registered this affection, her panting continuing, a ruff of her fur jutting up where her collar wound around her neck. At last they reached the wall, and the gatekeeper, a different man than the one who had abandoned his post in the rainstorm, Alma noticed, but was disinterested, pulled back the bar to let the carriage through, but snow piled too high, mere 50 yards from the gates, and there were no peasants to clear it away after such a storm, and the horses couldn't pull them much farther, so Alma yanked over the carriage door, ignoring Emery's call. "Let me do it, Alma, you should stay inside," and stepped out into the snow. The drifts were knee-high and dense as death. Alma's legs felt the shock of cold, then tingled into numbness. She turned back to the carriage and lifted the lynx, who was so large now and awkward to carry. At least the lynx was large. Perhaps her size would help her. Then, sorrow in her arms, Alma turned into the vast whiteness of the world beyond the wall. Each step cost her. The snow of her hands gripped her ankles, clawed at her skirts. Alma walked a pitifully short distance away from the carriage, no more than a few feet before her knees trembled and she could go no farther. Then gently she set Sorrow on the snow. She took the lynx's head in her hands and turned her face up so that Alma could look down into her amber eyes. She knelt and kissed the lynx's head and pressed her forehead against the cat's. Sorrow, she said, low and quiet so that only the cat could hear. I love you. Run free, my darling. Catch rabbits. Drink from streams. Remember me if you like. Forget me if it does suits you. Sorrow's head was up now, her eyes brighter, her nose twitching in the cold air. She smelled delights unknowable to Alma, who reached for the clasp of the collar and with nearly frozen fingers managed to wrench it free. Sorrow is no more your name, Alma announced, her voice louder. Now I call you Fury. The collar slipped to the snow, nothing but rubbish, and free of it, Fury shook her thick dappled coat. She turned her head in the direction of the forest, sniffed the air once more, and was off. Her first few steps a trot until she found her legs in the snow, and then she ran, loping fast and free away from Alma, Emery, and the carriage, and the wall, and all the things behind it. She did not look back, not once. Emery's grip. Alma knelt in the snow, staring after Fury, long past the time when the lynx had disappeared into the forest-heavy trees of the forest. It would be fine if I knelt here until I became the trees, until I became the snow. The thought filled Alma's mind, and she felt herself growing stiller and stiller, her limbs stiffening in the cold and her eyes half frozen, gazing after her Fury, not wishing her back, but wishing her on and away, gone. Alma, called Emery from the carriage behind her. She heard him throwing back the furs and heard the squeak of his foot on the runner. Quickly now, with fingers so stiff as to be nearly useless, Alma reached beneath her cloak and plunged her hand so icy down the bodice of her gown. She fumbled blindly, fingers too cold to feel, and heard Emery's trudging through the storm. There, her fingers clawed at the eye worn by her breast and plucked it out. It flashed amber and open, all-seeing and blank at the same time. And then she closed her fingers into a fist and it disappeared. Emery's footsteps crunched ever closer through the snow. Quickly, Alma pressed her fist into the snow at her feet, only opening her fingers when they were deep buried. Then she pulled up her hand and smoothed the snow over, blanketing the eye where it would rest until spring. Finally she stood and turned to Emery. Thank you, she said, doing her best to smile, for bringing me here and for waiting while I said farewell. I told you, did I not, said Emery, his hand on Alma's elbow as he guided her back to the carriage, that wild beasts do not make for good pets? You did, Alma answered. She allowed Emery to help her into the carriage and settle back onto the seat. You did. Emery seated himself next to Alma, and the carriage master, who was as silent as a ghost and nearly invisible, shut the carriage door. The horses were whipped into motion, and as Emery pulled the furs back over their laps, the carriage took them back toward the castle. Under the blanket, Emery's hands found Alma's. You are half frozen, he said, and he rubbed her fingers vigorously between his palms, bringing them back to life with painful needle-like tingling. Alma did not cry out, not at the pain of her skin reawakening, and not at the pressure against her burned palm either. She sat stoic and allowed the ministrations. The carriage jostled them back and forth as it rolled through the soft, snow-soft sound, the air heavy with the smoke of so many combined fires. Emery rubbed until Alma's hands were as near as warm as his, and then he stopped. Though he did not release her, Alma sat still, wanting nothing, wishing nothing, for all she had wanted and wished had brought her. You know, Emery said, his voice quiet with secret, you need not have thrown away that eye. Alma stiffened and her heart ceased. My king? She asked. Oh, don't be silly, Emery said, his mouth widening to a liquid grin. I know you took that eye that day. Do you not think that I know everything that happens in my kingdom? You saw me take it? Alma did not bother with a lie. Well, no, but Paulin saw the gap, of course, and he pointed it out to me. And why else would you have gone so beyond the wall? Emery did not wait for Alma's answer. It matters not. You could have kept the eye, if it gave you pleasure. You are to be my queen. In 3 days' time, after all. No one would have dared to punish you for such an infraction, not while you are under my protection. I see, Alma said. Emery's hands were still trapping hers, and he held them in his laps, and he felt beneath the tangle of the hands rising in the king's yard. Alma tried to pull away, but Emery's grip remained firm. Indeed, he pressed her hands down upon the growing, hardening lump at the center of them. But we are but 3 days from our wedding, Alma, Emery murmured. I am your secret keeper, and soon to be your husband. Surely you would not deny me a taste of your sweetness now, this day, after the favors I have given you. He did not wait for an answer, and still he did not free Alma's hands. Holding them both in one of his, he managed to twist free the button of his trousers and guided Alma's fingers to the shaft of them. A noise like his escaped from Emery as he used his hand to wrap Alma's fingers around his yard. It was hot and hard, with a dew-wet trip at his tip. Emery moved Alma's hands within his grip. up and down, slowly at first and then faster, until with a grunt and a groan and a spasm so tight the knuckles of Alma's fingers cracked, a jet of warmth spilled out of him and trickled down Alma's hands, still encased in Emery's. A moment passed, during which the only sounds were Emery's laboured gaps and the intermittent squeaking of the carriage wheels. When Emery's breath had quieted, he cleared his throat and released Alma's hands, which were still wrapped around the king's yard, now softening and shrinking. Her fingers were coated with a sticky mess of it. Alma pulled her hands away from Emery, still under the furs. Quietly she rubbed away the wetness of the carriage seat's cushion, as Emery readjusted himself and refastened his trousers. Then she tucked her hands back into her lap and sat as still as she could. The carriage made its way back to the castle. Her face was blank and her hands were still, but in her mind Alma was imagining the lynx bounding across the unmarked snow, wild and free, further away from the castle with every moment it passed. The Queen Mother's truth. Without the lynx, Alma's room felt even larger and colder than it had before. Emery had returned her to it, and at her door he took her hand, the right hand, without the scar, and kissed it. "I will not see you again until the wedding," he said. "It is our tradition for the groom to leave the bride in 3 days before the ceremony." "Is it?" Alma asked. "To build an appetite," Emery answered, and he grinned. "Ah," Emma answered. "In the meanwhile," he continued, "since you have been obedient, and since you do not doubt be lonely without your pet, you can return with my blessing to the glass-blower's fire. As long as you promise not to endanger yourself, leave the glass-blowing to the man, Alma. That I promise." "Then until we meet at the altar," Emery said, and bowed, and then he left. Alma went into her room. Tilly was there, waiting for her beside the fire. Alma could feel Tilly was wanting to reach out to her, to comfort her, but the lynx was gone, and there would be no comfort for that, only the knowledge that the gone was better than here. "I should like to go to the glass-blower's room," Alma said, "and then the king has given his permission." "Oh, that is good, lady. The heat down there will do you such good after travelling out of doors into such cold air. Only, lady, well, the Queen Mother has sent for you once again, you see. She said you are to go to her rooms as soon as you are returned and dry." She did. A visit with the Queen Mother. Alma could think of a few things more distasteful in her current mood, and her desire to return to the fires of the glass-blower, but this was her lot, it seemed, to do what others wished of her, to hope to carve out any stolen moments with her own desires. "Very well," she said. "Put me in a fresh gown then, Tilly, and let's have it over with." Again, or perhaps still, the Queen Mother was abed, propped by the bolsters wrapped around layers of fur and blanket. Alma hesitated in the doorway, wondering if maybe she could sneak away without being seen. But then the Queen Mother called, "Well, do not lurk in the door, girl," letting all the warm air out, and so Alma went inside and closed the door as fast behind. She approached the bed, and the half-dozen cats perched upon it fixed her in their glowing green scares. 3 cats piled at the Queen Mother's feet, a 4th curled in her lap, another pressed tight against her left hip, and a 6th, a ginger male, whom Alma had held first when she visited the Queen Mother's chambers, nestled in the Queen Mother's cradling arms like a suckling babe. "You wish to see me, Queen Mother? Come closer," the Queen Mother said. Alma did. She walked all the way across the room and up to the bottom of the Queen Mother's bed. "Closer," the Queen Mother said, and Alma walked to the foot of the Queen Mother's bed and the head of it. Around the Queen Mother's shoulders draped a familiar fur, buff-colored, richly dappled. It was the lynx mother's pelt, made into a wrap for the Queen Mother. Alma looked down into the Queen Mother's near black eyes, and the Queen Mother looked up into hers. "Ah," said the Queen Mother, smiling, "so it has nearly happened, then." Alma was about to ask what the Queen Mother meant, but then she remembered something that Alice had told her the very first time they met. She was a beauty, Alice had said. Ink-black hair and shiny it was, eyes of amber, a figure worth rescuing, no matter the risk. Bosoms, tremendous bosoms, a waist no bigger around than the king's hands could hold, small feet, pretty hands. Eyes of amber. The Queen Mother's eyes were not amber now. They were dark, deep, almost black, as Anna's were becoming. "Your eyes," Alma said. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Yes," the Queen Mother said, "and yours." Alma felt her knees weaken and sunk to the bed. At once the ginger cat twisted out of the Queen Mother's arms and stepped prettily into Alma's lap. "He favors you still, that one," the Queen Mother said, nodding at the cat. "Perhaps today you will be ready to accept my gift of him, now that your lynx has gone away." "I set her free," Alma said, not bothering to wonder how the Queen Mother knew. And though her hand stroked the cat, her gaze searched the Queen Mother's eyes. "It was a kindness," the Queen Mother said, "and for my son's sake, I am glad to see that you are capable of such a selfless thing." "It was not selfless," Anna said. "I could not stand to watch her die, as she would certainly have done, had I kept her here with me." "Everyone and everything will die," the Queen Mother said ruthlessly. "Death is but one truth." She narrowed her dark eyes, and then quieter, she said, "In 3 days' time you will wed the king. You shall become the queen. For this becoming, there shall be no unbecoming." "That is not entirely true," Alma said boldly. "For you have been the queen, and now you are the Queen Mother. And I shall take your place, shan't I? You shall unbecome the queen." "When I came to this castle," the Queen Mother said, "there was no queen for me to replace. She had ended her own story, as I told you before. Do you remember? The queen swinging for her bedpost." Of course Alma remembered. Had she lived to see me come to the castle, her story would have ended in this bed, instead of hanging from it. By the time the king had planted his seed in me, the king's mother would have died, most likely in her sleep. The cat in Alma's lap stretched his claws, stretched and stretched, one paw and then the other, kneading himself a nest. "This is how it has always been. We come and we are tilled and planted. We grow our crop, we wither, we die. Whether by our own hand or the hand of time, it matters not." I have been tilled, I have been planted, I have grown my crop of one good son, now I wither, soon I die. Alma's hand had grown still on the fur of the ginger cat. If you stay, I go, said the Queen Mother. If you go, I stay. You will be queen of this world, and there can only be but one. Alma's fragments. If I stay, Alma said. Her voice was slow. Of course you shall stay, the Queen Mother said. The damsel always does. I stayed after all, did I not? You did, said Alma. But what if you... before the dragon? What of any of us? Could you not have left to find out? The Queen Mother shook her head. There are but 2 paths from here, she said, and the road is not one of them. I did not wish to die, nor do I. I am dying now, you know, and I am surprised by my resistance to this fact. I suppose I have found that living quite suits me. Perhaps I could have been a good ruler, a just ruler even. I will never have the chance, of course. There is a world for men. My husband ruled the lands, and now my son shall, as it should be. So we will not know what I could perhaps have done with real power. You shall be queen and helpmeet, and I shall be dead. Alma began to protest. Why should the Queen Mother die just because Alma would wed her son? It was unnecessary, and though the Queen Mother had held no special spot in Alma's affections, the thought of her death did not suit Alma either. Imagining the Queen Mother lifeless in her bed, eyes closed to the world, felt like a harbinger of Alma's own inevitable death, perhaps in the very same bed, perhaps surrounded by the grown kittens of these very casts, not so many years away. Queen Mother, Alma asked, why did your eyes change from amber to coal? Why have mine? Yours are not yet black, the Queen Mother contradicted. You have not yet had your wedding night, but they will blacken, Alma said, as yours have done. It is the way it has always been, the Queen Mother answered. Your heart, once fire-hot, is transforming. You feel it. I know you feel it. Alma nodded. And that is the way it has always been, the Queen Mother said again. And if something is the way it has always been, who are we to wish it otherwise? Who are we to want anything at all? Who are we to desire? Unbidden, in a flash, came the image of Fury, bounding through snow under a bright blue sky. I desire, Alma said. Do you? The Queen Mother said. How interesting. The cat had settled now. It was a heap of ginger fur, one paw twitching in sleep. The cat favors you, the Queen Mother said again. Would you like to take him now for a pet? I have no need of a pet, Alma said, placing the cat, who mewed unhappily, on the coverlet and then standing. If not now, then after the wedding, the Queen Mother said. They shall all be yours, Moll, my cats, after that. Do care for them, won't you? They have been such a comfort to me. Alma made no promises. She turned to go. The Queen Mother called after her in a tone Alma hadn't heard from her before. Remember, Alma. Alma stopped, stood still, waiting for her to finish, but that was all she said. Remember. When Alma found her way back to the glass-blower's room, the heat breathed out at her in a welcome wave. She breathed it in, filled her lungs full of fire warmth, and felt herself melt a little. Your return, said the glass-blower, who was not working. He sat for as far from the fire's mouth as he could get, sipping a drink that he had held in both hands. His words were as wet as liquor. Indeed, Alma answered. Then you look uncomfortable, Master Glassblower. I imagine a day or 2 away from the fire would do you good. This is my place, the Glassblower said. There is no other. Alma considered her position. She very much would like the Glassblower to leave, but as he said, this was his domain. She had no power to command him from it. What work she might do, she would have to do beneath his unescapable gaze, like his eyes surrounding the city and castle. Here, too, he would watch her and judge her at his will. But Alma decided, though she could not be rid of him, she could ignore him. Very well, she conceded. You shall stay, but do not trouble me. Bah, said the glassblower. Where are the fragments from before? Alma asked. The broken shards I set aside. Melted down, of course, said the glassblower. You think I keep a barrel of scraps for no reason? It was not no reason, Alma said, anger rising in her throat. The reason was I had need of them. I beg your pardon, lady, but even the queen-in-waiting cannot tell the glassblower how to do his work. It would be nothing but a waste of time to argue her point. No matter, Alma said. I shall make more. She took up a great glass bowl from its place on the rack, raised a foot or so, and let it slip from her fingers. The glass-blower's protest died on his lips as the bowl shattered into pieces, some as large as her hand, others as light as dust. He watched open-mouthed as Alma moved on to the next piece she wanted, this one, a wide, rosy platter, and knocked it against the edge of the rack, splintering it into 1,000 fragments. You have lost your mind, the glass-blower said, rising. When I am queen, Alma said, I shall pay you well for your lost work, and even better for your discretion. The glass-blower weighed her words for a long moment. Then he lowered himself back into his chair. You shall pay me very well, he amended her promise. How well, Alma said, will depend on how thoroughly you are able to lead me to my work. The glass-blower sipped his drink, nodded curtly, and turned his back on her. Not quite as good as leaving the room entirely, but better than nothing. Alma looked at the shards she had made. Each was a sliver of the things she planned to create. She would need many, many more of them. After all, she was building a memory of what she did not yet know. Almost 3 days. Was it 3 days? To a young beauty in the arms of her beloved, it is a moment. 9 months later, to the woman she becomes and gripped in labor, it is a lifetime. Almost 3 days passed in both ways at once. She fell in love and she birthed, in the same motions, in the breaking of each cup, plate, bowl, platter, and vase, in the gathering of every shard, from the tiniest to the greatest, in the melting heat of the poker taken from the fire, touched to the tips of the shards, softening and melting each one. At first Alma did not know what she was making, only that she must make it. The pounding in her head and the scar on her hand beat to her the Queen Mother's word, remember, remember, remember. It began to take shape, slow but sure. As Alma melted together fragments and shards and little broken bits, her eyes began to see what her hands were making. It was a great spined beast, opaline, a triangular-tipped tail that widened to a thick root, an ovular body with 4 clever clawed hands, a crested neck, a wide high forehead, a pointed snout. It was, Alma saw, a dragon. Each scale was a fragment of glass, each softened by fire and hardened into this, the thing Alma made in her 3 days. At first the glass-blower did his best to ignore her, as she had told him to do, but the days were long, the nights still longer, and till he appeared and reappeared, begging Alma to leave her work, to attend her final dress fittings, to sleep if just for a little while. Alma worked on. The glass-blower stayed, sometimes awake, sometimes asleep, even while he was dozed. Alma worked on, and each time the glass-blower jolted awake, it was to find Alma still at work, and her dragon becoming something more. At last the glass-blower could neither ignore Alma's creation nor pretend to. He stood from his chair. He peered from behind Alma, grunting as she attached another and another glassy spine. He crept closer and closer until Alma could feel his hot, moist breath on her neck. "If you want to be of service, and not just in my way," she said finally, "you can tend the fire." It was to his credit that the glass-blower did not complain about being relegated to the assistant role. The truth was that he wanted to see what became of Alma's 3 days nearly as much as she did, and so he stoked the fire to a greater heat, and when his flask was dry, he refilled it with water rather than with more liquor, and as the second day rounded into a third, and Alma's creation became undeniably a dragon, his grunts shifted into ahs of appreciation. "'Tis nearly alive," he said, "the way it catches the fire and glows. 'Tis as though it breathes." Alma did not look up from her work. She held a palmful of glass shards, as fine as whiskers, and one by one she put the tip of each to the poker, fresh from the fire and glowing red and orange with the heat, until it softened, and then she took it into the chin of the dragon, where she pressed it gently among the others, framing the dragon's mouth with tiny knife-sharp scales. "What about eyes?" the glass-blower said, for the dragon's face was flat from forehead to snout. "You would not show me how to make eyes," Alma said, still absorbed in her delicate work. "That was before," the glass-blower said. "Now I will show you." It was a moment until Alma answered. Then, "No," she said. "Thank you, but no, I shall make the eyes on my own." And when she finished with the dragon's chin, Alma took a bright yellow chalice she had found and pushed it to the far back of one of the glass-blower's shelves, dusty and forgotten. She had dipped it in water to clear the dust away, and then she broke it neatly on the table. She gathered the pieces into a thick metal bowl and pushed the bowl into the fire, where the fragments fell in upon each other and went from solid to sharp to liquid, and without beginning or end. But the color was not quite right, Alma saw, when she retrieved the bowl from the fire and stared at the molten glass. She took a knife-sharp shard from the work table and ran it along her finger. Red welled up like tears, and Alma squeezed her blood into the liquid glass. She stirred the mixture, blood deepening the yellow to honey-rich amber, and then Alma was ready to craft the dragon's eyes. Now the glass-blower had set himself back in his chair, arms loose at his sides. Alma formed the blood glass into 2 orbs, and these she affixed to the face of her dragon. She finished her work just as the sun went down on her 3rd day, and she stepped back to admire it. The glass-blower admired it too. "It is beautiful," he said, and Alma knew it was, though she knew not what it meant. They stood together in silent appreciation of the thing Alma had done, and then the glass-blower's door slammed open, and Emery filled the doorway. Emery's 3rd weapon. "Master Glass-blower," Emery said, teeth set in a line, "give me a moment alone with my intended." And though the glass-blower had not been willing to leave his room on Alma's request, he scuttled like a beetle through the door and away. Even as Emery spoke the words, "I have come to collect you, Alma, to take you to the altar, for it is time that you take your place at my side. I ask you, Alma, why have you not returned to your room, to ready yourself for our nuptials? Surely you know that this is the night we wed." "I have been working," Alma said. Emery laughed. "Working? But why?" "Look," Alma said, and she stepped to the side, revealing behind her the dragon she made. Emery's smile faded. The color from his face drained away. Alma watched his eyes dart over her glass dragon, from its amber eyes to its spike-tipped tail, down the spiny scales of its broad back, across its vast wings folded in at his sides. "What have you done?" he whispered. "It came from me," Alma said. "I do not know where or why, but Emery, I think it is my own self trying to tell me something. I want to know more, Emery. I want you to tell me about the day you rescued me from the dragon." "It does not matter," Emery said, his eyes still ensnared by Alma's creation. It does, Alma's insistent rang loud. It does matter. I must know, Emery, please. Tell me. Why was I in that castle? How did I come to be trapped by the beast? Why was I unharmed when you found me? And what happened to the dragon? Emery's gaze snapped away from the sculpture and to Alma. I told you I conquered the dragon. I rescued you from it. So you say, Alma grew insistent with impatience. But you conquered it how? You rescued me how? Alma, said Emery. His voice had shifted, became softer, cloying. Some things are just better for you to entrust to me. If you had need of such knowledge, surely I would have given it to you. Have you not yet learned that I have your interest at heart? Think of sorrow, had you but listened to me when I first said that wild beasts do not make good pets. Think of how much heartache you could have saved yourself, having to learn that lesson the hard way. Alma did think of the lynx. She remembered the playfulness of her, the kitten, in that grassy field. She remembered, too, the look in her mother cat's eyes, the look of recognition that Alma would not hurt her kit, and then the look seconds later when the pickaxe had struck her. Had you not needlessly killed Fury's mother, I would never have taken her as a pet, Alma said. Her heart beat faster, hotter in her chest. Fury? That is what I call her now. She is sorrow no more. She is Fury, and she is free. This angered Emery. That was clear. He strode closer until Alma felt his breath on her face. Say another word, he threatened, and I shall set Paulin and Isolde after your Fury. They shall hunt her, and they shall find her, and our son shall sleep in a cradle lined in her pelt. Now the heat of Alma's blood roared in her ears. You would not, she said. Indeed I would, and I will, Emery said. As Alma heated, so Emery seemed to cool and calm, as if he believed that all of Alma's fire and anger could amount to nothing. I believe your time in the glass-blower's presence and his humoring your desires to make such things as this, and here he waved a dismissive hand at Alma's dragon, has filled your head with all the wrong ideas. You see, Alma, it is for men to create, it is for men to decide, it is for men to speak, it is your place to listen and follow and gestate. And those are no small things, for without women to listen, how would the men's words be heard? Without your fertile womb, how could my son hope to grow? You are important, Alma, desperately important, but do not overreach. Tell me how I came to be here, Alma said. Tell me where the dragon is. The dragon is gone, Emery said. I conquered the dragon, and you should thank me well for the favor rather than being a thorn to me. Upstairs your girl waits to dress you for the altar. The prior reads the chapel for our nuptials. The cooks in the kitchen prepare a great feast. The musicians tune their instruments, all of them waiting for what? A girl, no more, just a girl. Where is the dragon? Alma said again. A scent, a sweet spiced tang, filled her nostrils. Gone, shouted Emery, and he took his arm and slashed it into Alma's creation. It happened too fast for Alma to stop him. Her dragon shot across the table and fell to the floor, shattering into 1,000 tinkling, impossible pieces. Gone, Emery said again, his voice now triumphant. Do you not see how lucky you are to be freed of that dragon? You have no idea. I saved you from a life of meaningless solitude and monstrosity. I made you beautiful, and I brought you here to be a queen. You, Alma, were nothing until I lifted you, until I took you from that place. I am a hero, Alma. A savior. I am a king, and I demand you to treat me as such. But Alma did not see Emery now. She barely heard him, as if his voice came far away. She was in a great room surrounded by a great beauty, sculpturous, of jewels, collected and hoarded and transformed into carefully constructed dances of color, shape, and light, each of which told a story, called forth an emotion. Here in the citrons and diamonds, a monument to spring, hope, and youth. There in rubies of all shades and shapes, an angry roar of blood spilled in battle. Under a wide window, a twisting river of emeralds and sapphires dotted with diamonds to make their water glint. The great hall was a sanctuary, the gems its altar, and Emery had come to destroy it just as he had ruined her glass dragon. She had been the artist. She had been the dragon. Alma looked up from her shattered glass into Emery's face. You, she said. And Emery saw that she knew. He lifted his chin. And what of it? He said. Without me, what would you be, a monster? I made you beautiful. Without you, Alma said, I would be free. Oh, free, said Emery with a wave of his hand. The sweet spiced tang of her own dragonness wafted now from her skin. Emery thought freedom was not so important, and he thought the dragon was gone. How many other ways, Alma wondered, was Emery wrong? You tricked me back in my lair, Alma said. Not hard, Emery countered. I used my brain, that's all. My first weapon. Dragons cannot see shade or shadow, only shine and light. And then Alma saw in a flash her first home, the great amber orb from whence she had come, the sun, her beloved, a riotous monster of explosive flames, the sun, her own heart made large. She had come from the orange-red fuzz of its curve. She came from the royal and boil of its skin. She came from the explosive jets of liquid flame. She came from the quiet dance of whirls and swirls. She came from its glitter and shine. She came from its movement and its silence. She came from the rivers of plasma, the sprays of flaming crimson, the ribbons of copper, the consultory the constantly changing, living, breathing, beating, churning, yawning orb. She was of the sun and from the sun. She was not a plaything of this little man. You stabbed me with your steel, Amma said. I did, my second weapon. I found the unprotected flesh beneath your arm. I pierced you good, I did. Amma remembered the blade going in, the surprise of it. She saw herself biting at the wound, desperate to extract the metal from within her flesh. She felt her teeth connect with the sword shaft. She remembered how it felt to put it out, the rush and gush of blood that came with it. And then, said Amma. Yes, Emery said. It takes 3 weapons to conquer a dragon and free a damsel. My brain, my steel, and my yard. Amma's end. Your yard, Amma said. You should thank me, Emery repeated. You, the dragon, managed to extract the steel. The dragon lay and bleed, but I knew it would not be long before it rose again, and my sword was gone, so the next time it attacked I would be done for. There was nothing to lose by trying. And Mother had told me that it takes 3 weapons to slay a dragon. My yard I have with me always. Of course, Emery continued, a dragon is not female in the same ways as a woman. They are singular creatures. They do not eat, but get their strength from sunlight. They do not mate or birth. One a generation, that is all. 1 dragon, 1 damsel. You are my destiny, Amma. I had to take you. I went to the dragon's lair to find the damsel. I would leave with one. You improvised, Amma said, remembering. She had lain bleeding on the stone floor of the lair, rose-tinted mirrors all around her, gems and jewels scattered into disaster, and here came Emery, loosening his buckle of his belt, freeing the horn of him, entering the bloody tear that he had ripped beneath her arm. Then there was nothing, no more, no memory, until she opened new eyes to find herself in his arms, in his saddle, in his possession. I made you beautiful, Emery said again and again. You keep saying that, Amma answered, but I did not ask for your beauty. I made beauty all my own. I did not need you then. You need me now, Emery said. I am your destiny as much as you are mine. Now enough of this. It matters not where you came from or what I did to bring you here. All that matters is what we shall do, and that is this. We shall forget all this nonsense. The glass blower shall sweep up this mess of broken glass, and I shall deliver you to your girl who will dress you for the wedding, and we shall meet at the altar and be wed, and I shall be king and you queen, and you shall birth me a son, and you shall find all the beauty that you have need of in my arms and in his eyes. For that is the way it has always been, and that is the way it shall always be, from the beginning of time to the end of it. The scent of Amma's own sweet spice tang, the rush of her blood, hot now, near to boiling, the knowledge of her truth of her, these things she would need to set aside to do as Emery commanded. It was true what Emery said. As long as there had been kings, there had been conquered dragons and damsels brought from their lair. Not rescued, though, stolen. I think, Amma said, that I do not wish to marry you or be queen. I want none of it. Girl, Emery said, it matters little what you want. Remember your sorrow, or your fury, if you'd rather, for if you give me trouble on this count or any other, she shall be hunted until dead, I promise you that. Grant me leave and promise not to hunt my fury, Amma said. Do these things, and I shall go in peace. You seem to be under some misguided impression that you have power here, Emery said slowly, as if he spoke to a young child. But you are wrong. Slowly Amma knelt, and when she rose again, she clutched in her hand a sickle-sharp spire of glass. I too have 3 weapons, she said, and glass is but one of them. Enough, Emery spat, and he lunged at her. Fist connecting with her temple, pain shot through Amma's head. Her vision went to stars, but she held her space and did not fall. Her hand clenched the glass. Blood poured from her palm, but she did not waver. Strike me again, Amma said. An invitation? A threat? It mattered not. Emery lunged again, and this time she was quicker, deftly sidestepping his fist, the spiked, sharp tip of her weapon entering his chest just beneath his ribcage. She drew it upward like a filleting knife, opening Emery wide. He stumbled back, his mouth in a surprised round O, hands reaching up to try and close himself like a jacket, his lifeblood spilling, pouring, and he fell to the ground among the splintered remains of Amma's self-portrait. One should not make a pet out of a wild beast, Amma said. She mounted Emery, now over him, and ignoring his batting, bloodied hands, and reached into his chest, pulled open his mortal wound, and extracted his still-beating heart. It pulsed in her palm, and Amma bit into it like a ripe plum. In the chapel all the king's men were gathered and waiting for the ceremony to begin. In the kitchen the cooks and scullery maids worked to arrange a fine feast for their king. In the great hall the musicians sat, instruments in hand. In Amma's room Tilly waited for the return of her mistress, and in her bed, surrounded by cats, the queen mother watched through her window as a great opaline dragon cut across the sky and disappeared, singular, into the night. Thank you for listening to Damsel by Elana K. Arnold. Let me know what parts of it, if there were any, that meant the most to you.